This is the Andre Segovia Show.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to the Andres Segovia Show. Today, I have a very unique episode for you all on a topic I did not know existed. And I'm excited to present all this to you with my special guest today. My special guest is Amanda Rutledge. She is the CEO, correct? You're the founder and CEO of
Right.
Tours of Duty. Amanda, welcome to the Andres Segovia Show. It's good to have you on.
Thank you for having me, Andres. I'm excited about this.
Yes, you and I got connected at the Benghazi Warrior Weekend. It was a charity event raising awareness for PTS and honoring heroes, particularly Benghazi and such. And we're seated at the same table. And as we were talking off air, we couldn't really connect at the time, but here we are almost 2 months later, having a conversation I wish we had back then.
No, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you and speak to the issue at hand. So thank you.
Yes, because this is something like Wendy, it's the one that really pushed us to do this. Shout out to Wendy. What I never heard of this, what we're about to talk about, but in order for people to get an idea of before we get into that topic, please let them know who you are and what you do, and or even tell us a little bit about your story, what you did.
Sure. So Tours of Duty is a nonprofit. We're dedicated to the search and recovery of our more than 81,000 POW MIAs. There are 81,000 who have never come home. So I started off, people ask me how I got into this space. Most people come to it from having a family member, but I came to it from a different angle. I started in Iraq in 2008 and spent 4 years there. Started off with a company called Blackwater, with whom I believe you're familiar. Spent 4 years there, and then coming back from that, watching the challenges that not only those vets had, but even our soldiers and everyone else coming from that area, from those experiences in Iraq and Afghanistan, trying to reintegrate, trying to adjust to civilian life after everything they've been through, trying to find that sense of purpose again. We still average a suicide every 6 to 8 weeks from the group that I was with over there. And that's one of the things that we're really trying to stem. So a little bit about my history. So I did spend 4 years there. At the end of my tenure, I was the task order manager for the Baghdad Embassy Security Force. So I was responsible for the static security for the embassy itself, the ECPs and the IZ in the area. So it was a big responsibility at an incredible time to be a part of history. And it was really a pivotal time in my life, something that has stayed with me ever since. So it was very important to me to try to help try to help people who are struggling as they come back. So we took a look at it and we said, what is it that makes people feel this way? And a lot of it, there's no one size fits all to mental health, but a lot of it came down to not having that same sense of purpose that they had when they served. So we said, well, what kind of mission can we connect them to that would give them that same sense of meaning and fulfillment? And we took a look at the POW MIA issue and the challenges associated with it, even internally, and thought this would be a great way to reintegrate veterans, get them some new skill sets. And I don't know any veteran that wouldn't go back for a brother. So that's kind of where it's born from.
Yeah, wow. I'm glad you brought up the suicide struggle. It would have been about a month as we record this that I asked my Instagram audience on my stories how many. I put up the chart of how many official combat deaths for public serving armed forces members from 2001 to 2021. And I also included deaths from private military contractors such as Blackwater, so people get an idea of that number. But then I put a poll. How many suicides among veterans have we seen in that same time period? And most of everybody was not picking the number I put. It was somewhere around 120, 130,000. In that same time period, that dwarfs the number that we lost in combat.
Yes.
And my audience was just absolutely shocked at that. And I've had veterans on that. Some of them are cancer survivors from the burn pits fiasco that happened when they served in Iraq the first time. We often say support our troops. That was a big rallying cry in the early years of Iraq and Afghanistan. yellow ribbon and all that. But then they take it down when they come home. It's like they need our support as their home, and they're among the mixed majority of our homeless population, and it breaks the heart.
Yes.
And that's why I'm appreciative of events like the ones where you and I met at, that are trying to bring awareness to this and give the help that's needed. And I'm glad that you felt compelled to do something and were able to do something in addressing this. So part of your mission has been to help reintegrate some of our veterans into society.
It is. So what we do is everyone is a volunteer in this organization. There are no salaries. So people come to us with a passion for going back and doing something meaningful and helping these Gold Star families who have been underserved for, 50, 70, 80 years, depending on which conflict their loved one was lost in. You say we have the slogan of supporting our veterans. We also have the slogan of leave no man behind, when the reality is we have 81,000 who have been left behind. And our own government estimates that 38,000 are recoverable. So the congressional mandate to recover is less than 200 per year. So it's a very slow process. And as I mentioned, a lot of the Gold Star families feel underserved. There are some incredible people in the agency responsible for it, some real heart, and I'm not trying to diminish that by any sense. But there's certainly room for improvement for us as a country and as agencies that engage in this.
Okay. All right. So you just threw some numbers out there, and I'm just trying to grasp so people can.
Mhm.
If we heard what we heard, so there's about 81,000 you said that were left behind, and there's an estimate of 38,000 that are recoverable. But the mandate of Congress or of our government is that at most bring 200 home a year.
That's their minimum requirement, yes.
Oh, the minimum requirement. Oh, okay. I thought it said, all right, you can bring 200 home, and well, how many years would it take to bring 38,000 back? And so I want to make sure I heard that one right. Okay.
And I will say that in the last 11 years, that mandate has only been met twice.
Oh wow. Well, how do you search?
So we typically start with family members who are looking for answers. We get feedback through our social media, through our website, and we'll begin to look into the cases. We start with the National Archives and see what's available through that open source information, see if we can piece together what happened. And then we start building from there, interviewing whether it's family members, people who served with that individual. And as we progress, we absolutely expand into witnesses in country locations. So it's very similar to a cold case investigative process, interviewing witnesses, putting together the facts, and trying to establish what may or may not have happened to that individual and see if it's actionable for us to go and do some field research on it.
The number of 81,000. What's the beginning point of that being tracked? Is like World War One, World War Two, Vietnam?
World War II. There really isn't formal tracking for World War I. The number of MIAs estimated from World War I, and this is completely informal, it's not been documented, is somewhere around 113,000 just from World War I. So, but they do not include that in those accounting numbers. The official accounting started with World War II.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Okay.
72,000 are from World War II of that 81,000.
Of that 81,000, oh my goodness, I thought there were
Yeah.
more like from Vietnam.
So, our greatest generation. Yeah.
And these are not the ones lost at sea.
No. There are more than 1,500 still MIA in northern France alone, which is more than the entirety of what's outstanding for the Vietnam War.
Holy smokes. World War II, we have so many historians devoted to that era. We have so much money thrown at that era to always highlight it because it's just such a fascinating time too. Um, and I've never seen anything periodic or film or documentary mention anything that you just said, that they didn't come home.
Right.
And the majority of that number is from World War II. So
Yes.
we abandoned our greatest generation.
Yes.
Oh man.
My grandfather was an Army Ranger in Operation Overlord, so that part of it is very personal to me. To see again, for me, my grandfather was a saint, and to think of all of those men who fought and died and gave everything. They were probably the most patriotic generation, determined, just full of grit and guts and goodness, really. So it's hard to look at those numbers and then even to look at some of the cases that they think occurred and why that number is so high. So
I'm familiar with the Tomb of the Unknown Soldier, so where they bury those that are unidentified. Any chances that some of those might be those that are maybe not correlated to the ones that are missing?
sure. So if you look at, again, I use northern France as an example. 1,500 missing from northern France alone. So we know that, and I forget the total number, a little over 800 are buried as unknowns in the national cemeteries there. So, okay, of that 1,500, we know that 800 are buried and being cared for, you know, in an appropriate manner. But that still leaves several hundred from that war who have not been located.
Yeah.
So, and each theater breaks down differently. Certainly in the Pacific, there were a lot of deaths in the water. There was a lot from ships that were sank, prison ships that were sank. And unfortunately, some of those are part of the numbers that are considered unrecoverable.
Yeah.
But there's certainly plenty more work to be done, even in the fields of Europe, before we go anywhere else.
Oh man. Yeah. Wow. No, because I had the impression that when we first talked that this was a lot of them was Vietnam. That's why it's stunning that it's World War II, and then the unofficial numbers of World War One. Just wow. So, um, you said twice has the number been met of 200 minimum to be recovered. Uh, roughly when and were you part of being able to recover those, or how?
No, so that is all through the DPA. That's the agency responsible for recovering
Oh, okay.
our POW MIAs. They're mandated by Congress to do that. So they're the ones who have the official accounting. And then anytime that there is a repatriation, now be very clear this, as a nonprofit organization, we don't have the authority to repatriate. If we do anything, it has to go through those official channels, if and when it gets to that point. But they're the ones that are responsible for investigations and field excavation for the U.S. government.
Okay, so I think I'm understanding the process more now. It, people come for a search, they come to you. You're like, I like using pop culture for people to understand better because, well, it's easier that way for them to get a picture. So Sherlock Holmes and Watson, that's what I'm putting you as. And they come to you with a case, but just like technically Sherlock Holmes and Watson don't do the arresting or the legal part, that's where Lestrade comes in and they handle the legal part. So in this case, in trying to piece this together, your organization does the searching and the locating, and once located, turn over to this group that then does the recovery.
Correct. Yes.
Okay, good. I hope that paints a word picture for those listening on audio. But yeah, I'm glad I understood it that way. Because just to give the audience an idea, I'm not even sure I've shared the story before for my audience, at least publicly. It was December 2023 already. Yeah, December 25th, Christmas was the last time I spoke to my friend who served with Marine One. He's under Obama at the time. So that was the last time he and I technically spoke when we wished each other Merry Christmas. I didn't know that 5 days later he'd be dead. He went overseas for vacation. His wife and child said, "Don't go, or at least wait for us to go with you." But him being, it's like, no, you got to be on time. And him being him, he went. He is someone that suffered from PTS, and that it's that comes into play with what ends up happening later. I think he was in Cartagena, something like that, in Colombia. He was in the third or fourth floor restaurant. So there's like a lot of balconies there. And in the restaurant, there was a gas explosion. So the patrons, they all ran out. And while they went for the door, he went for the balcony. And he was trying to get to a different balcony on a different floor to get a safety, but he slipped and he fell. So he was officially ruled a suicide by police, though, because people said, "Oh, he leapt off the balcony." So, but they missed the entire the action, what happened before that, and there was an explosion at the restaurant that caused all the patrons to go. But because they ruled that a suicide and they needed to investigate, his wife or widow in this case needed to go through a longer process to try to retrieve him after she got the call from the embassy. So, look, they have an open case on this and they won't release him. So that took a lot longer to try to recover his body to get him back here. So um, that was a learning process for me too. I didn't know that it was that difficult for her to finally get him back. And when he was eventually recovered, and given the proper burials to the Gold Star family's cemetery in Laredo, Texas. So, and the thing that really hits me is that my buddy always said, "Hey, come, I need you to visit me one day in Laredo," and I finally come to visit him, but it's to bury him. So that was at least I could tell him that, hey, I kept my promise. But that process alone was and in trying to write the records with the idiot police over there in Colombia, that was difficult enough. I cannot imagine how exponentially more difficult it is for what you do, and in working with I guess a government agency to also get it done.
Right. Yes. And local governments, depending on where we go, we have some great relationships in Cambodia, in France, in Europe, really wonderful relationships and very supportive local governments for when we go through the process of getting the approvals to do what we do. And then, yes, interfacing with our own government agencies and, trying to navigate both worlds.
Wow, no, that's very involved. Wow. Yeah, there was a lot more than I expected there, and I appreciate the heart that goes into this, to try to do it. So, how long have you been doing this for now with your organization?
So we started Tours of Duty in 2022. We had a build up, ramp up period, and we've done a number of missions over the last year and a half. So actually, we're coming up on 2 years now that we've actually been actively doing field investigations.
And you yourself go too, or you have a team that does it for you?
Primarily, we prefer to send the veterans. I did go on the one to Cambodia this past year. And we have another one coming up here shortly that I will probably go on at least for a period of time. But the goal is to have the veterans involved in that, employ their skill sets, get them new skill sets that are usable.
Mm.
For example, we put some of them through forensic anthropology school, through drone school, things that they can use in their everyday life. So yeah, that's the goal, is to get them involved and have them do these investigations.
Oh,
And they
wow.
bring a skill set that is completely different than an archival historian looking at the case.
Mhm.
We have one team member who's a former sniper, and he was out there with us in Cambodia, and he was kind of wandering around this area. I mean, middle of nowhere, Cambodia. And he said, okay, if I were going to ambush somebody, where would I be? And coming from his perspective. And he walked over this one area and he put the metal detector down and came up with a handful of shell casings.
Wow.
So it was just seeing that from a perspective of someone who's been in the field and has that knowledge, really makes a difference in how the cases progress.
Yeah, and that's what few people understand about the skill sets that a lot of these veterans were trained to do. Because oftentimes some of them are coming right out of high school. So when they're spending their learning years learning to do this, and then to be brought back, it's like, well, what do I do now? Because now you're competing for a job that others are your age are qualified to do, and you're not. You got to start kind of at the bottom rung of the ladder, and you don't want to be an insurance adjuster. That tends to be the thing that they say. That's why, hence, there is something else that existed, private military contracting. Like, to go back, just that, of course, depending on what political viewpoints some people have, they'll see it as a gung ho mercenaries and all that. And of course, I completely reject that, because why do we celebrate the Minutemen back when our revolutionary years? Why is it now different? This is what they know how to do. And I often share that story of Matt Best, one of the co-founders of Black Rifle Coffee, because he couldn't. That's why he kept going back. It's like, I can't adjust until he just could not. You have to, you termed out, so to speak, and he had to kind of break back in. And it's people miss that, and uh, that's what makes it so hard for them when they feel ostracized among their own people. They can't be here, and I think that's why I felt this importance to try to be that bridge between the civilian world, because I didn't serve. When I'm around some of the veterans, they often ask me, how long did you serve? It's like, oh no, I didn't serve, and I'll never steal anyone's valor. But it's like, but why do you speak like one of us? It's like, wow, I didn't even know I was. I just try to understand you guys. So I try to be that bridge between the civilian world and the I guess the armed forces world, whether it was public or private military contracting. And in essence, that's why organizations like Blackwater existed, to continue using the skill sets of these of people that stopped public service. And I get early on, if I have this right, Blackwater recruited, right? They recruited, is not just like, oh, come apply for the job. Do I have that
Right.
right?
That is correct. They recruited, and you had, especially early on, you had to have very significant skill sets and experience within the military to qualify to work with them. They really took the best of the best, and had the privilege of working with some giants among men in that field, working alongside them. So just incredible guys that they brought on for that.
And so you were recruited to work for Blackwater as well at the time?
So yes, I went through the vetting process. I was not a typical candidate because I did not have prior military either. But I was afforded the opportunity to go through their vetting process, and they said you're either going to pass or you're not, and there's a high chance that we'll wash you out anyway. So went to it with an open mind and as much determination as I could. And I was very privileged to be able to be a part of that.
Oh, good on you. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, because that's what people miss and they don't understand. And I think that films like 13 Hours, what they kind of brought to light, and I usually try to make a parallel with the film Black Hawk Down. Black Hawk Down showed the world the worst kept secret of the government. The Delta Force do exist. But in the case of 13 Hours, I think people have kind of heard about PMCs. But if people think about PMCs, they might think just Blackwater. And like Blackwater wasn't the only one that existed and still wasn't the only one. But GRS technically was that. And that kind of brought that to light. And what I found a little unfair was like, so why do we hold this one in esteem but not the other one if a lot of these guys were the same ones that served on either side? Because I know that Boone and Tonto, who were the heroes in 13 Hours, they served and trained. They were instructors at Blackwater, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
No, but yeah, so that brought to light something that I didn't know. So that's why the first of the GRS that I had on the show was Oz. And I had him walk through this whole thing because I'm like, hold on, this is not exactly known. Tell me about this. And then explain the whole workers' comp thing. There's only one pretty much that serves it. And as someone that works in construction, having to deal with workers' comp and how difficult it can be and what do you call it, X mods there, you don't have a choice. So they can price gouge you. And when I saw like, okay, so the way they turn down workers' comp cases is if you stepped out of bounds in what you were told to do. And those guys did. So they risked it completely. So when I highlighted that, people were like, well, I wasn't really thinking about that because there was no safety net for these guys. So that's why I started digging more and looking into more. And that's why I'm like, you know what? I have respect for those that served honorably in Blackwater. And of course, some people will say like, well, there were some bad apples there. Well, every company has bad apples too. Heck, I'm in real estate. We have bad realtors. That's why they keep making laws against us because everybody thinks I'm going to try to chip them on the commission. It's like I just think it's unfair to hold different standards for someone else like that, especially when, to Blackwater's credit, you guys protected you guys fulfilled all your mandates. You guys did not lose one of whoever you had to protect.
Right. And to add to that also, of all the protectees, they never lost a single protectee. And a lot of Blackwater's work was doing the diplomatic protection work that the Secret Service would normally do in any other environment other than a combat environment. So they never lost a single protectee. We did lose 43 of our men on mission. They gave their lives protecting those individuals. But also what they don't realize is that Blackwater used force. If you look at the numbers of missions and ops that they went on, they used force in less than 1% of the time.
Wow.
Yeah. So they did their job very well. There were some unfortunate things that happened. And, for people who are interested in learning about Raven 2-3 and what really went on, there's a new book out about it. There's a very lengthy podcast out that really dives into the reality of what that was and not what the media circuits made it to be. But not to get into all of that. But yes, Blackwater was very disciplined, the best at what they did. And again, using force less than 1% of the time. I mean, that's less than our military. That's less than our law enforcement. They were stellar at what they did.
Wow. And the more I looked into that, the more I back up what you say. So, and I got to meet other Blackwater alumni, as I mentioned, when we're at the Benghazi Warrior Weekend. And some stories sounded very familiar to what I read about in Eric Prince's Civilian Warriors book. Some of the stuff in landing with a injured individual in the middle of a desert in the dark. There's just nothing there. That story alone, I wish I could tell, but I'd rather have those that lived it to tell it. Just knowing about that. But I'm hearing it from this guy on the shuttle when we're going to the shooting range, and I'm like, wait a minute, I heard this story before. I'm gonna double check, but you might be the guy that Eric Prince was talking about. It's like, so my world was getting smaller when I was telling you as how I'm drawn to all this. Like, oh, fascinating. But one story that I wish Eric had been able to tell here was uh he was looking to open a facility in Potrero, San Diego County in Southern California, and he was spotted the place. It was a community at the time. I think we just had less than 1,000 residents there, and he looked into possibly opening a Blackwater facility there. I think it was like oh 07, oh 08, something like that. But then the people got wind of it, and they kind of said, "Nope, we don't want to hear. Get rid of it." So he couldn't open it there because they saw him, all the negative media to just kind of ran him off from there. I was like, okay, so be it. But that was followed up by one of the biggest fires in up to that point, and when it happened in Southern California, and Potrero was heavily impacted. He didn't have any responsibility to it, but he got some Blackwater types and went down there to go help those people. And even though he got to helping them, Blackwater helped out. There were some that said thank you, and other was like, no thanks, we don't kind of need you here. So that kind of encompasses that. Even though I feel that history will absolve a lot of what Blackwater, because they lost the the case in the court of public opinion, because that's what happens with propaganda and all that. But as history is coming about more and more accessible, and people realizing, hey, what I was told was not it, I hope that more people are open to discovering about that and understand and not demonize those that serve in Blackwater honorably, such as yourself, such as others that I mentioned off air that I've spoken with as well. So that's my way of saying thank you for your service and thank you for what you continue to do. Um,
Thank you.
I think we covered a lot of ground in this because I don't want to push it a little too much. But if anyone is interested, or if anybody is in need of your services or is curious about your services, what would be their first steps?
So first steps, we ask that you submit the form that's on our website. If you go to toursofduty.org, we do have a submission form on there. You can provide basic initial information, and one of our team members will call you for a consultation, discuss the case, and if it's something that they would like us to look into, and if we think we can look into it and make some headway in the case for them, we will absolutely do that. We're more about giving closure than anything else. So toursofduty.org, and they submit that form to us. And we also have a form on there if there are veterans or anyone who wants to get involved with the organization. Everything from archival research to family to support to field deployments.
And just to make sure, this is the website, correct?
It is, yes.
And this is that section, start to search?
That's correct, yes.
Okay, so there it is. Okay. And for those that are probably thinking that the monetary side of things, do they have to look at initial investment into this?
No, we never ask a family for a dime. Tours of Duty is grassroots funded. We survive off of donations and goodwill of the public. We do not ask the families for a single cent. And on occasion, we will bring family members with us if they feel that they really need to go into the fields. And we've done that a few times now, and let them see, the last place where their loved one was known to be, get an understanding of what occurred. And sometimes that's enough closure for people to say that they can go home and, say, all right, someone looked and I've seen where it is, and we'll do that. But no, there is no investment. There is no money. We do our fundraising external to all of that.
Understood. And if anybody would be interested in donating, you do have a donation page on your website also to help the effort. So for those of you that are watching and listening on the audio podcast, you guys know the drill. I'm going to be leaving links to anything and everything that's mentioned here, including the socials for Tours of Duty at theundersegovia.com. Because it's worthwhile. Definitely explore the website, and if you can, by all means donate. And hopefully you don't need their services, but if you do, good to know that an organization like this exists. I think that's a really good place that we can leave it for the audience. It's anything else I'll give you the last word. Anything else you would like for them to know? You have at it.
No, I just would really like to thank everyone. Thank everyone for listening and for their interest in this. It's really important that we continue the search in Vietnam. In particular, there's still live leads and live witnesses, and we need to continue to push the government and, anyone who's listening that this needs to happen. Please Mhm.
Yeah, that's actually a point that I wanted to bring up earlier. 'Cause that's important because you say you go to the sites and an investigation, talk to live witnesses, and the windows closing on Vietnam to speak to those live witnesses. So that is true. Wow. So man, I don't even know where else to go with that because that is that's what makes the cold cases of World War II even more difficult to grasp because some of those like man, that's a tall order there. But in you deal with forensics as well in order to identify these individuals, or in some cases, might they be found alive and they just kind of lost their identity or something like amnesia?
Unfortunately, there wouldn't be really anyone alive at this point. I don't think that there's any expectation of finding a live POW at this point in time. We're talking 50 plus years
Mhm.
later, in harsh conditions. So no, there's no expectation of that. But yes, forensically, we try to document everything that we have according to national and international standards. Um, and the one thing that I will bring up, and the reason that I say that it's important that we continue to push the government, is that it's our understanding now that the DPAA will discontinue field investigations on the Vietnam War next year, which means that there will not be anybody looking for these live leads or continued witnesses or anything else. So we want to make sure that the rest of the Vietnam War is not left behind in favor of disinterments through our national cemeteries.
I see. And is there a way to maybe delay that or extend it?
It's really the agency's choice, their operational choice. So if people are opposed to it or think that we need to continue those field investigations overseas, encourage everyone to reach out to their congressman and let
Mm,
their voice be heard.
yeah. Oh, well. I'm glad I gave you space to bring that up because wow, something else to be aware of. Holy smokes, uh, that's a lot. It's a heavy subject, but at the same time also very hopeful because you had this on your heart and you did this and are doing this, and God bless you and and your team and what you guys do. So I'm glad that we had an opportunity to connect, and I'll be able to bring this to light to my audience as well.
Thank you so much, Andres. It's really important and really appreciated.
Yeah. So we're gonna sign off for our audience here. Any socials you want to plug in before we sign off for them?
Um, Facebook, Instagram, and X, Tours of Duty. On X, we're Tours of Duty USA. So
Oh, okay. All right. Good to know. So I'll find those and then I'll put them in the show notes as well.
thank you.
Amanda Rutledge, thank you
Yes,
so very much for being on the Andre Segovia Show. Don't hang up yet. We're signing off for the audience. Thank you so very much for being on. And if anything ever comes up, you are more than welcome back on to share it.
truly appreciate it. Thank you so much.